Hey there, Writer Rebels. I asked for your burning questions and now I'm here to answer them. So join me today for our 500 subscriber celebration. Hey there, everyone. It's me, Scarlett Kol, young adult author, YouTuber, and storyteller, and I am here today to answer all of your questions for our 500 subscribers celebration. That's right. Back in May 2022, this channel hit over 500 subscribers, and I am so excited that all of you want to, hang out with me, which is absolutely fantastic and more than I had ever really thought of when I first started this channel. Anyhow, back then I did also get access to the community tab for this channel where I posted about your burning Q&As of me, the writing process, anything about this channel, whatever you wanted to ask was fine. So I did get some questions that I do want to address and answer those for those people that are dying to know. But I did want to say thank you to each and every one of you for being a subscriber and coming back here week after week, month after month, and checking out my content. I really, really appreciate it. If you ever have any questions or you have some content that you would like me to do, you can always leave that in the comments. You can pop me an email. You can put something on the community tab, whatever you want to do to get my attention, and I will definitely look into it if it's something I feel comfortable talking about. And if not, maybe I'll talk about why I don't feel comfortable talking about that, if it's something, controversial or not necessarily in my wheelhouse. So today I'm super duper pumped to be answering some of these questions. Some of them are really, really great, and I had a lot of fun kind of like thinking through them and coming up with my answers for you. However, if you are not a subscriber and you're just watching this for fun, you can always become one. It's very, very simple. Just make sure you're hitting that subscribe button and the little notification bell below this video, and YouTube will let you know every time I put out new content. So without further ado, let's get to the questions. So I have all your questions here on my handy dandy computer. And the first question comes from Shraddha. I apologize if I'm not saying that properly. I do try really hard. If you do want to check her out, she has a great channel here and she interviews authors, mainly young adult authors in kind of like that fantasy space. So if you want to go check out her channel, she's done some really, really great interviews. She did an interview with me as well. So if you want to know more about me on like a personal writer level, you can always check that out. But her question was, what authors did you dislike at first but grew into? This one was a little tough because I did have to think about it. I don't have any authors that I totally just really didn't like their stuff and then went back and found something that was completely fantastic. Usually if I really dislike a writer, I typically don't pick up books from them very often. However, I do have this one author that it's not that I disliked her work. It was just more of I read one of her books and then didn't really continue with the series. So who I'm talking about is Maggie Stiefvater. So I read the first book in the Mercy Falls, Wolves of Mercy Falls series, so Shiver. And I know this was a super, super popular book for her. And I enjoyed it. I did like reading it, but I didn't really pursue the rest of the series. So I had read it and then I was like, okay, well, maybe I wasn't like burning to get it. I've read some series where I've put the last book down and couldn't even wait and then just bought it in an ebook so I could have it immediately on my phone. This was not one of those books for me. I still really liked it, but I had no interest in continuing with the series. And then my life got busy and I never got around to reading the next books and I just moved on. So later on, when I was working, I used to work downtown and there used to be a bookstore very close to where I worked, and I used to go there on lunch hours. And I walked in and there was this book on the shelf called The Raven Boys. And I loved the cover and I picked it up. Do I have a copy of The Raven Boys here? Okay, it looks like I have the last three, but not the first one up here. But they all have this very similar kind of cover. On the first one is this really cool raven, and then we have the main characters on the bottom. Anyway, I thought the cover was really cool. I picked it up and I read the blurb, but the blurb sounded like almost a little hokey. And if you've actually read the book, if the original blurb is still on there, it doesn't necessarily give the full story. It definitely does not serve its purpose to really sell that story, at least to me anyway. Like there's so many amazing things about that story and about that series that I just don't think come across in that blurb on the first book. But anyway, So I kept picking it up. I kept reading this blurb on the back and I was like, and I'd put the book down. And then every couple of months I would forget that I saw it. I would see the cover, think it was really cool, pick it up, read the blurb, remember that I read it, and then put it back down. Then one day I was reading an article from Rolling Stone. Actually, it was the top 25 or top 100 YA books of all time. And there was like Catcher in the Rye and all that stuff on there. And there was this book, The Raven Boys. And I was just shocked that it was on this list. So it must have been smaller, probably 25. And so I was like, okay, well, I need to give this book a chance. So I ended up buying it and I devoured it. It was so good. I always liked Maggie Stafford's writing. She's a very beautiful writer, but this story just like totally hooked me in and I absolutely loved it. And I definitely continued with the series and I've continued reading her books from there on. So if I had given up after Shiver, I would have totally missed out on one of my favorite series that I have ever read of all time. So I'm really, really glad that I took that second chance and started The Raven Boys because it's so, so good. And if you haven't had a chance to read it, you definitely should check it out. It is amazing and one of my absolute favorites of all time. All right, so the next question comes from Lindsey, and Lindsey said, which author would you most like to meet in person? So this one I thought about for a while and I was like, do they have to be living or dead? Because there's like that whole thing. But I decided I think the person I would probably want to meet the most is V.E. Schwab or Victoria Schwab. I think the reason I'd like to meet her is I follow her a lot on social media and she seems just like a really cool person that I could talk to and really get along with. I really relate to a lot of her posts about writing and she has some really similar writing hangups and processes to things that I do. So I think that we'd probably just really get along and I would really like to kind of like pick her brain considering she's this like huge juggernaut author about how she does things and I would be really interested in her writing process. Plus, as a reader, I'm a huge fan of hers. I love a lot of her books and I would just, totally fangirl to meet her and just know more stuff about it. If you have seen that show First Kill that just came out on Netflix, I just binged the first season the other day. It was really, really good. It's based on a short story that she did and she was involved with the screenplay for the show itself. It was so, so good. And it's definitely kind of like in that same genre that I write. It's in that young adult paranormal type of world type of vibe. And so this is something that I would relate to her as a writer. I would relate to her as a reader. And I just think she's a really cool person on top of it. And I would just really love to meet her. So my next question comes from Rubina. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly as well. What advice would you tell yourself when you first started out? So this has kind of changed over time. There's a lot of things that I feel I've made mistakes with my career in terms of writing. I did a lot of genre jumping. A lot of people do that and they are successful with it. I don't think that really worked for me. I think I should have continued series and continued things that I'd started at the beginning instead of leaving them as standalones, various different things. But I think the one advice that I would probably wish I had told myself and kind of need to tell myself on a regular basis is just kind of just stay in my own lane. There is a lot to unpack there, but really staying in your own lane in terms of if this is what I really want to write, then I should do that because trying to write something that I don't enjoy or that I can't really lean into is going to make the whole process harder. Like writing a book is not an easy task. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of creativity. It's a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears. So if you are not writing something that you at least partially are passionate about, then it's just going to make that job so much harder for you. And for an author who doesn't put out a book a month, only puts out as much as they can possibly handle on top of other things in their lives, there's going to be a limited amount of books that I'm going to be able to put in my backlist in my entire lifetime. So I should focus on the things that I really, really want to do. And I struggled with this last summer because I was like, oh, I should be writing this because it's so much more popular and I'm going to sell more books and all that kind of thing. But when it really came down to it, I really like writing young adults. I do. I love it. And even if it's going to be a bit of a struggle for me or maybe not as simple as writing, some of the more bigger, more popular genres or more trendy genres, then I guess that's just what I really need to do. This also focuses on marketing and your business and all that kind of stuff and plays into that imposter syndrome thing in the sense of people are going to do different things and they're going to have different results depending on your career. Some people are going to be further ahead than you. Some people are going to release their second book and totally take off where you might not get anywhere until book 10. And that is a really humbling and hard pill to swallow. And I'm constantly choking on it all the time. But it's like, I can't necessarily do all the marketing that some people can do. I can do better than some people though, because this is my career and this is what needs to happen for me, and how I write my books and how I outline and how I do everything is going to be different for me than it's going to be for someone else. It's definitely good to listen to advice and listen to, what's out there, but you really need to take what works for you, dump what doesn't, and reflect on where your weaknesses are and what you can do to fix them, and where your strengths are and to lean into them instead of trying to do what somebody else is doing in any realm of the writing and publishing process. And that's really, 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 really hard because there's a lot of people who are very vocal about what works and what doesn't, and what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. Yet there's always going to be people who are doing the things they shouldn't and doing well with it, and doing the things they should and not getting that success. So this is a really tough one that I keep trying to tell myself I should probably get it cross-stitched and like hung up in my office, but just try to stay in your own lane and follow your own journey, really. So the next question comes from K, literally just like a K initial. So what genre do you not write that you'd like to? This one, there's lots of genres that I'd like to write. I think one would be like psychological thrillers. I used to be obsessed with cases and serial killers and stuff when I was younger. Like when I was 13, I had the encyclopedia of serial killers, and I just loved the facts and the procedural part of that, and just how people's brains work and function and how they think through pieces and stuff like that. So I think writing like a thriller would be something that I would really like to do. However, I know it's very different than what I'm normally doing, and probably would take a lot of work in terms of plotting and making sure that everything hits off correctly. So if I did do that, I think it would be quite an undertaking because just of all the pieces that would need to go into that. But maybe one day I'll consider writing a thriller, but I like reading them, and I think that that's something that my brain would definitely eat up, trying to piece all of that together and make those twists and turns to keep people reading pages. The other thing I think that I might get into, and this is something I could actually see myself doing at some point if it continues as a genre, is paranormal women's fiction. It very much kind of has that kind of YA paranormal vibe to it, but just in a more mature sort of life. If you don't know anything about the genre, essentially it is usually women in their midlife kind of thing that are coming into their powers or have powers or demon hunters or whatever. And it's kind of taking that YA vibe that people really enjoyed and moving it into a more mature market. So I think I could really do that. Obviously, I can relate to people that, are in their 40s and stuff like that, to be able to write those sorts of stories. And I think my voice would translate very well there. So I'm interested to see how that genre kind of plays out. It just really boomed and seems to be holding pretty steady. People really seem to be enjoying those kind of books. So maybe if I ever get to the point where I'm done with YA, or I want to dabble into something a little different, then maybe I will try paranormal women's fiction. I would definitely need to take a look at some of like the spice levels and stuff of whether or not I would want to release them as Scarlett, or if I would try to either divert my career entirely and just go that direction and evolve, or, write two different things under the same name, or if I needed to rebrand for that paranormal women's fiction stuff to keep it separated from my YA. But I haven't started writing any of them. I've got some ideas, but nothing on paper, so I'm not overly worried about that yet. But I do have some friends that are releasing in that genre, so hopefully I will get to see their experience and see if it's something that I want to try out. But we'll see. So the next two questions are actually from Anonymous. Just nobody put anything in the little name. So hopefully whoever you are out there, you're watching. But how has your writing changed since you started? I think I've gotten better as an author. Every time you go through the editing process, you learn things about yourself and about your writing and how to be better. And each editor is going to pick up on different things that you do and basically teach you lessons through making your edits onto how you can do things a little bit better. I've also read a lot more books and paid attention more to, my genre and marketability and things like that. So I've really, I think, grown in terms of seeing those things on the page and being able to recognize them in the things that I'm reading. And hopefully, I've been able to apply them a little bit better. Hopefully, I think my writing has gotten better. And I think that my characters are a little bit more dynamic than they used to be. And I think that my plots are a little bit more interesting than they used to be as well, or at least I'm trying to make them better than they used to be. So I think you always get better. I think you always change. So who knows what I'm going to be like in 5 years. But the books that I've written so far, I think I'm proud of what I've put out. And yeah, I don't think I'm going to go back and change any of them at this point. I think I'll just keep growing and keep writing and keep putting out new stuff. So the last question that I have is also from Anonymous, and probably not the same Anonymous, but who knows? And it's, do you listen to music when you write? So technically, yes. I'm one of those people that loves to listen to music when I'm writing. It definitely gives me a vibe. I will find certain songs, if I'm writing a swoony romantic scene, then I'm going to be listening to love songs. If I'm writing an action scene, I'm going to want something more up tempo. I typically don't make a playlist. I know there's a lot of people before they sit down to write, they will make a playlist for the book of the things that they want to do. Mine just kind of evolves usually over time. And typically I do have a song or a couple of songs right off the bat. And most of that has come from when I'm imagining things and I'm kind of piecing those things together when I'm plotting. I will hear a song and be like, yes, that's the vibe I want. Or I'll hear a lyric and think, oh, wow, like that's totally exactly what I'm trying to say, or that relates to this character really, really well. So that's usually kind of where I start out, as I'll start listening to those songs. And I usually listen on Spotify a lot, so they'll suggest things for me. And I do have a writing playlist on Spotify that changes all the time. And basically what will start to happen is I'll start writing this book, and obviously the songs that I'm listening to, it'll move into the next song, into the next song. And I will find as I'm writing that certain songs will just have the right vibe for me as I'm doing what I need to do. So when I go to write the next time, I'm going to specifically, pick that song or go back to that song or songs when I'm writing. So that playlist kind of evolves over time. And by the time I'm done, I can usually sit there and go, okay, so these are like the 10 songs that would be on the playlist for this book. But I don't necessarily have them all from the outset. They just sort of grow organically from what I originally had. However, I definitely do have a theme song per book and usually a theme song per couple or main character, just to kind of get me in their head a little bit more. So that's really great. The other thing is when I dictate, I typically don't listen to music because I can't really play it out loud because it's going to mess with my dictation. I would like to try to find a way so I can listen and talk at the same time, because listening to myself speak kind of weirds me out a little bit. And when I'm editing, it depends. It really, really depends. Sometimes when I'm editing a scene and I'm listening to music, it really gets me into that flow, that vibe, because A, it's probably the songs that I was listening to when I wrote it. And secondly, it's just going to kind of have that atmospheric sort of feel to it that I want to put into the story. But sometimes when I'm wordsmithing and I'm getting down to the nitty gritty, or I'm really frustrated with a particular passage and I'm trying to think through stuff, I kind of need the silence to, block everything out and make those breakthroughs. So that's kind of where I am with music. I definitely love music. It's an important part of my creative process. When I'm thinking, when I'm brainstorming, I'm always listening to music. But for the most part, I do try to listen to music whenever I can. But sometimes you can't, depending on where you're writing. If you're just writing on your phone in public, you don't necessarily get the chance to listen to that playlist like you'd like to. But it's always something that I definitely try to do. All right, so those are all the questions that I had. I hope you enjoyed the answers. And yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do this again when we have 1,000 subscribers and 5,000 subscribers and 100 million billion subscribers. So keep your questions handy. And if you ever have a question, you can always ask me in the comments, or pop me an email or put it on the community tab, and I will do my best to answer it. If you've been watching my channel over the last month, I do want to apologize. I haven't had a lot of videos up, but I did promise that I would have this Q&A up in June, and here we are, the last possible day in June to get this up. There's definitely been stuff going on in my life. Don't worry, I'm okay. My family's okay. Everything's all right. But I've been dealing with some things that I just haven't been able to, be very creative and dedicate myself to YouTube and all these sorts of things. If you've checked my social media, I haven't been posting on social media either, which kind of breaks my heart. But I did make this promise to you guys that I would have this video up. So here it is. I am still dealing with the stuff, unfortunately. So I'm not sure what July is going to look like for videos. So please bear with me that they will come. I still kind of want to try to do Camp NaNoWriMo, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to with everything else that's going on. So maybe one day I'll talk about it. Not ready to talk about it right now. And I do want to, apologize for not having more content up, but I am looking forward to getting through this and hopefully having more stuff for you guys in the future. But otherwise, I will see you all the next time I post a video. I hope you have a lovely summer, and I will see you all next time.